Welcome on into 19 on the Clock, your Tri-State High School and College Sports podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pushkar. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Jackson McCarty. Jackson, how you doing this week?
I'm doing swell, man.
Good.
Doing great. I feel like I say doing great every week, so I tried to change it a little bit.
Living the dream every week.
I'm not a swell guy.
That's
really, it doesn't fit the accent.
Yeah, the S gets a little pushed underneath.
It just sounds like I'm doing well, and then kind of bumbled in the middle. The accent lends itself to dandy, but I'm not a dandy guy.
No, you're not a dandy
No,
guy.
I'm really not.
Respectfully, you're not a dandy guy.
Believe me, that's kind of a compliment. Because, yeah. But either way, point being, it's been a good week so far, Brad. How about yourself?
It has been a good week, and it's only getting better because, we're getting closer to March Madness.
Yes,
we're getting deeper and deeper into high school playoffs. Mm-hmm. Our recording is working properly this week.
It is.
Which is why we missed last week.
Yes, we had some in one of my signature moves. So look behind the scenes. We had a bit of a technical malfunction, and with how the basketball schedules are shaking out and whatnot, our scheduling time to record kind of falling in a weird spot in the week. So we didn't really have time to turn around, turn it back out. But we are back.
Yes, and we're going to make sure we're covering those things still today.
Of course.
Which is where we'll kind of start out. We'll be talking about high school playoffs, where those things are going. The baseball team that you need to be keeping your eye on even before opening day.
Mm-hmm.
And where things stand in college basketball as we head into March. 2 days away till March.
Ooh.
Selection Sunday, three weeks away.
What would that be, 23 days, I guess?
Yes, something like that. Yeah, just a little bit over 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, we're shooting on Thursday, so for any day.
As we always establish for our lovely listeners.
Well, it can be a bit confusing. You never know.
So let's talk about bracketologies because it's always fun to try and guess where things will be placed. It was the fun thing with the college football playoff bracket. It's the fun thing with 68 teams heading into March Madness.
Now, when you say the fun thing with the college football bracket, you mean the worst thing ever happened to social media for like 2 weeks?
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I'll say it. I kind of like the discourse every now and then. Except when it's focused on like a singular team. I like looking at the broad picture and kind of going, oh, that is interesting, and that'd be cool. Put them at 9. All right, okay.
Also, just worth mentioning, coming from the land I come from, the SEC and their fan base is awful. Like they are very tough people to deal with, and I mean because the conference as a whole is very spoiled. There's a lot of history, a lot of success rolling through there. That does not mean Ole Miss should be in the playoffs. But it becomes, whenever you have that many man-child fan bases, in a sense, that are very used to getting things how they want, and they're all only a handful of them can actually get that, things go sideways pretty quick. And poor Indiana gets dragged through the mud.
As someone related to UK grad and lifelong UK football and basketball fan, I will choose to not comment on that.
Well, I've got comments about UK, but no, I'm kidding.
But that's kind of so. There's 5 teams that are really tracking with all the bracketologies right now.
Yep.
From our general area, I don't want to say locally in the tri-state, but the general area of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, actually I shouldn't even say that because I'm not counting Purdue and Indiana, but more of our within like an hour or two.
Right.
So let's talk about Xavier, UC, Ohio State, UK, Louisville.
Okay.
I've been tracking a few different bracketologists. One, Joe Lunardi, ESPN. Everyone knows him. Everybody follows him.
The Google of bracketology.
Mike DeCourcy with Fox Sports. And then 2 smaller ones that I like reading and seeing where they go. One is Northern Kentucky Bracketology. His name's Hunter. He's a local guy. We've had him on the morning show last year. We're working to have him on the podcast either in the next week or so. But he does really great work. He actually is doing bracketology for Mo Egger now on his radio show, which is really cool for him. And then the other one I want to give a shout out to is Delphi Bracketology out of Delphi, Indiana, the high school has a club who puts together a bracketology kind of each week, every so many days. And it's a way for them to kind of learn about statistics and math and how it all plays out and things like that. And I think that's really cool. And in the past, they were the most accurate bracketologists in the country.
Yeah, I remember you telling me a little bit about that. I will say, I just as a broad overview, and we're not an education podcast, if you couldn't tell. But
we are, because we support high schools and colleges, which are at their core education.
But it's almost entirely the athletic side. But this is going to be an educational comment. Programs like that should be in most, if not all, schools across the country.
Yes.
Because that would catch a lot of the kids who don't like math and get them, the credits they need and actually kind of some engagement in schools.
It's like finding different ways to use coding.
Yeah.
For some schools and things like that, where kids are learning a life skill that they probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. If there wasn't this neat way to bring them into that.
Right. It's the math version of like home ec.
Yeah. Actually, honestly, yeah. It really is.
It's the math class that you get to bake cookies in, essentially.
And speaking of baking cookies, let's talk about the Musketeers.
Beautiful. What a transition, Brad. There's the Emmy.
So, I've kind of been tracking where these teams have been seeded. Now, not all of them are getting seeds, but are sitting on the bubble. Specifically, Xavier and UC, and also Ohio State more recently. I know last week when you and I talked on our Lost episode, they sat basically in the 11 seed. Right. Whether they were to play in or whether they got the first round bye was kind of up for debate, but everybody had Ohio State in. Starting with Xavier, Joe Lunardi has them in the first 4 out.
Okay.
Mike DeCourcy with Fox, next 4 out, so 5 through 8. Delphi Bracketology has them as a first 4 out.
Okay.
Northern Kentucky, first 4 out.
So, yeah, just right there on the outside.
Right there on that bowl, and they've been sitting there consistently. Because even with each day when things get updated, when games happen, Xavier is still being mentioned, I think, pretty much across the board. Okay. I can't tell if that's they need a big win in the last few games of the Big East to shoot them into 11, 12 seed, something like that. Or if it's just they need other teams to lose to really get into that spot.
I think it's probably both, but I also would imagine there's a twinge of tournament or conference tournament lightning rod to them.
Yes.
Where it's like, this could be a weird enough team that they make enough noise here in a couple weeks that we can't not include
They could be like a top 4 finish. They could be in the top 4 of the Big East tournament,
right.
And you're like, oh,
you hit
semifinals.
Okay. You get a semifinal spot, and it does become like okay, we probably need to get them in just on form.
Especially when right now it's been like UConn, Creighton, St. John's.
Yep.
Really sitting in those spots for the Big East and kind of representing that conference right now. I think if you get one of those teams knocked out, you find one of those lower seeds, and that'd be good for Xavier.
Absolutely.
The other team, locally, UC, a little bit rougher. ESPN does not have them listed at all, as whether first 4 or next 4 out. Fox, Mike DeCourcy, does have them in the next 4 out. Similar to Xavier.
Okay. Do you know who was ahead of who there?
Yeah. Let me pull it up real quick.
They might have even been back-to-back.
Because the way that they've listed it, it is Xavier, Cincinnati, Boise State, SMU. Okay. So if I'm reading it, if they're listing it numerically, Xavier 5, Cincinnati 6.
Well, we know it's not alphabetical based on that list.
Correct.
So I think it's safe to assume that, it'd be 5 and 6.
Yes. And I'll say in that first 4, spoiler, Ohio State right on the edge there.
Yep.
Texas, Indiana, North Carolina.
So, it could be a situation where it's like, we'll have 3 local teams just right there in that weird spot and local teams might even knock out other local teams.
And the Ohio State-Indiana thing feels like, again, what you were talking about with tournament and waiting to see what happens in the tournament. Indiana got the upset over Purdue.
They did.
My dad asked me if I was going to watch the game. I was like, no, because I don't enjoy watching those games. They stress me out too much. And it did stress me out, and that's why I only watched the first half. But full discourse here on 19 on the clock.
To steal a John Rothstein quote, get your nitroglycerin pills, buddy.
Death, taxes, Matt Painter. But Texas, North Carolina again in the ACC, hasn't been the dominant force that they are some years. Texas, I think, is just in a tough conference with the SEC this year. Because I was about to start talking about the Big 12, and then I was like, no. I'm wrong. And with the SEC, and like we've said, SEC very top-loaded, which kind of gets us to UK. UK, I want to point this out, is 19-9 and 8-7 in conference. They have one more win in conference than UC does, who is 7-10 in conference. Xavier is 10-7 in conference. 18-10 overall. UK just beat Oklahoma. UK is in a 3 seed with ESPN, a 4 seed for Fox, and a 3 seed for Northern Kentucky and Delphi.
We call that sticker shock.
Yeah. Well, and you look at who they have been playing and who their losses are to, and I do think it makes sense. One of the more recent losses was Alabama. I think the only non-conference. No, they have 2 non-conference. Excuse me. Clemson and Ohio State. They had a bad loss to Georgia, 13 points, a 5-point loss to Alabama earlier in the season, and then just recently a 13-point loss to Alabama, a loss to Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. But
strange collection, but there's a handful of tournament teams within that,
and they have a handful of tournament teams that they've beat, namely Tennessee twice. As an 8-5 ranked Tennessee. An 11th ranked Texas A&M, a 14th ranked Mississippi State, and a number 6 Florida. All beaten.
Kentucky is, I don't want to even call them the litmus test because they beat better teams than they typically lose to.
Yes. And I think their last 3 games, Auburn, LSU, Missouri. Auburn obviously feels like the real test.
Johnny Broom is a problem.
I think you beat Missouri and like you sell yourself as a 3 seed in a way.
Again, though,
even more
might be a tournament thing. If they come in here and lose in the first round or the second, then you do really have to reevaluate some stuff.
Do you think it's wrong to say that I feel like the SEC, the teams that will make it for the SEC have mostly been decided, but
you're not wrong with saying that first part.
But they will kind of figure out where they're going in the tournament.
Yeah, I think there's, 6 of them that they've already pretty much been like, okay, these folks are going to represent the Southeastern Conference here in a month.
I mean, the ESPN has 13 SEC teams in the bracket.
It won't be that
now.
many. It'll be probably 8.
Let me see if I can look at the.
To me, it feels like there's 6 for sure, and then 2 to 4. That's like, okay, depending on how your tournament goes. If you let 13 in, there's only, 16 SEC teams?
Yeah, right?
With Texas and OU, I think it brings it up to 16. So that feels weird.
that doesn't seem right.
Only 3 people in the conference are being that's absurd.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the conference right now just to double check because that does feel crazy. Let's hear 1, 2, 3. Okay, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Missouri. So 6, 9, 12, 16. Yeah. So I'll say this: they are basically excluding South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma. I'll specifically point out with like ESPN because Fox has Texas on the bubble.
But it's funny because that's 3 of Kentucky's last 4 games.
Yeah, where is Texas in? I'm trying to. Yeah, Texas is an 11 seed in ESPN's bracket right now, and they are 5-10 in conference. Yeah, and 16-12 overall.
See, that's a bubble team that pretty much they're waiting to drop from the tournament.
Yes, I do. I actually I'm really on board with you on that right now because again they have a Xavier, SMU, Indiana, North Carolina as the first 4 out for ESPN, and I just think putting one of those, even Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Wake Forest, I wouldn't even put Oklahoma in.
No,
man, that's crazy.
Nor could you. But that's what I'm saying, though.
Okay.
Like, it's those. Essentially, what it feels like to me, because we know ESPN has had a couple shining moments.
And let me add to this was last updated by Lunardi 2 days ago.
Okay.
So there is the loss to Kentucky that Oklahoma has.
That'll knock them out.
That will likely knock them into the first 4 out.
Yes.
because they were the last four in.
But worth mentioning, we know that ESPN has had a couple shining moments where they show a little bit more interest in the teams below the Mason-Dixon line.
Mm-hmm.
It feels to me like they said, okay, let's put the SEC as the placeholders here, as if if they do great, they stay.
And see where some tournament stars kind of come through and shine, which could be a Xavier, could be a UC. Absolutely. If you really get something crazy going on there. Could
even still be some of these SEC teams, but I think they want naturally to have the SEC teams in there. So if, a couple have to move out or whatever, or things just stay the exact same, they're like, oh, well, the SEC teams are already there. You know what I mean? And it's not like, oh, we had to pull this team so, you could be in this bracket or what have you. You know what I mean?
Yes. And so let's move away from the SEC for a second, back to the Big Ten, because I do want to talk about Ohio State. Lunardi had them in as an 11 seed. Again, they were one of the only bye rounds. Mm-hmm. Fox has them as a first four out, like I mentioned.
Yep.
Delphi does not have them ranked in their most recent one.
And from last week, we learned that they don't do a top or the next five out or four.
They do not do a next five. They do a first four, which is North Carolina, Xavier, Georgia, SMU.
Okay.
And they do have Indiana in the first four playing in Dayton, which a lot of these bracketologies do have Indiana out.
Okay.
And then lastly, Northern Kentucky has them as a first four out as of today.
Okay.
So Ohio State, Xavier, Texas, UNC, first four out. Cincinnati, Wake Forest, SMU, George Mason as next four.
Okay.
George Mason's another name that kind of keeps popping up everywhere. But I will say then the last team that Kentucky is going to be a 3, 4, 5 seed, I think, pretty solidly.
Unless they have just a meltdown, and even still the floor is 6.
The other Kentucky team, Louisville, does have a pretty solid seed spot. They're second in the ACC right now.
Right.
Lunardi given them a 7 seed. Fox and Delphi, 6 seed.
Okay.
Northern Kentucky, a 7 seed. He has them as the top 7 seed, basically, too. So 25th overall. Makes sense to me because I think Kansas could possibly move down. You move Louisville up, put them in a 6.
Again, they're kind of in
a lot of places that these can move around.
Right. They're kind of a holdover, but they're more a holdover with upward mobility instead of placeholder for whoever we decide fills out the rest of this field.
Yes, and Louisville's basically tied with Clemson for second right now. They're 15-2 in the conference. Louisville's 22-6. Clemson's 23-5 overall, and then they're a game behind Duke. And then from there, it's SMU is 4 games back from Duke.
Yeah. Which Cooper Flagg and the Blue Devils have built up a great year, so just be one behind them's a good place to be.
Yeah, and I don't know if Duke will actually fall at this point.
Probably not.
Let me double check what their last 3 games are here, because I think if you get a Louisville or a Clemson in that last little bit before the tournament, it could be no. And you have Florida State, Wake Forest, North Carolina, and I think Duke will handle that pretty handedly.
The only one that might be something is North Carolina, purely for the rivalry.
Yeah, and Duke beat Louisville to open ACC play and lost to Clemson.
Okay, yeah.
So
splitting hairs at that point. A really good year regardless. And
yes, absolutely a good year.
They're probably going to be leading the coop out there. It's just a matter of how the second and third fall.
I think if you're a Wildcats fan, you're a Cardinals fan right now, you're happy.
Yeah.
This is good spots to be in. And I think even as a Musketeers fan, especially with how like non-conference kind of played out, to be on the bubble, pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Especially like you said, whenever kind of conference play started opening up and things kind of went a little sideways, just being right back on track is a massive situation for them.
Yeah. Again, we'll kind of keep an eye on these bracketologies. We might not go as in depth moving forward, but again, 3 weeks to Selection Sunday, roughly. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But there is playoff basketball happening right now. Tournament basketball.
You missed something.
No, we're gonna say that. We're gonna save that for last.
Oh, my bad. Got my structure wrong.
It's okay. But let's move on to high school.
Yeah.
For a minute. Continue the basketball rather than continue the college discussion.
There we go. Yep.
You have some championship games for districts.
Yes.
We're mostly focusing on Ohio. I know Kentucky played on Wednesday night, you said.
Right.
And we have some scores from that as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of what's happening on Friday for the Kentucky games. Didn't want to, try to – really there wasn't enough time to string together notes. I think next week is going to be a lot more conducive to that. Mm-hmm. So we should actually be able to talk about the Coopers and the Riles and the folks that are still alive. But we will run full screens on the games you need to know ahead of Friday whenever I wrap up these actual coverages of, like you said, the Ohio games.
Perfect.
And I do want to preface this for both yourself, Brad, and for the viewing audience.
Yeah.
We got some weird games going on. There's a lot of strange happening.
Okay.
And I'd love to tell you about them.
I'm excited to learn about all the weird.
Good, Brad. We'll tuck in because we got plenty. Let's start with Elder and Fairfield, shall we?
Yes.
So let's start with the Panthers because we talk about them fairly often, and I've been to, I believe, 2 or 3 Elder games. The thing I've learned about them, and really the entirety of the GCL South, is the offense is a little questionable. The defense is really good, and the game plan, at least from my vantage point, is run things a little slow, focus a little bit more on your pacing in the first 3 quarters, turn the gas up in the fourth, and hope your opponent is tired.
Okay.
Because, like, for example, I left the Moeller-Elder game. Elder was up, I believe, 7, and it was like, I say up 7, it was like 21-14 at, like, the end of the third, or, like, in the middle of the third. And the game finished, went to OT, but I think it finished, like, in the 50s to 40s or something. It was like the gas really comes in at the end there. And that's a trend I've noticed with them throughout the year. But they're 14-7. They average about 50 points per game to 47 allowed. So the defensive numbers don't quite back up what I'm saying, but based on the visuals I've gotten, have to go with what I got.
Sure.
Now, I will say they did have a pretty tough run before the tournament time started. They were 0-4 from January 31st to February 8th. That includes losses to Moeller, Wyoming, who was undefeated for a decent chunk of time this year,
sure.
LaSalle, Olentangy, Liberty. But they did avenge it by beating St. X to end the year and then beat Milford by 9 last week. So
2 solid wins.
Right. They're getting back on track. They're finding that footing again. And we do also know that they played Fairfield earlier. They Elder beat Fairfield by 7 in this year. So
okay.
I wanted to focus primarily on what we learned from that matchup and kind of how I see things translating here. The output offensively for them in the first matchup was great, but I don't know if it's sustainable because it's not really their bread and butter. Like you had Cam Williams turn out 22. You had Alex Dugan on 17, Caden Eastep on 12. Those are running on the impressive side for the Panthers most nights.
Is Cam Williams more like a 15-point, 16-point most nights?
Traditionally, he is their leader.
Yeah.
He is the guy that they've kind of built the ship around, but it is a lot more like reliant on some of these guys. I'll get 6, I'll get 7, I'll get whatever.
Yes.
And not necessarily that take over 20 points per game type thing.
Sure.
So yeah, that's a trend that I want to watch because maybe they just have the keys to Fairfield's defense, and we see something similar, but not something I'd really want to bet on too heavily. Mm-hmm. They did technically hold Fairfield under their average points per game. Fairfield averages about 55 on the season, 54 in the game, splitting hairs.
Sure.
But, it did still kind of work out for them.
But 1 point can matter.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And boy, will we figure that out later in one of these games.
Okay.
But, they didn't have any blocks, which is a little weird to me throughout the game. And then they lost the rebound battle despite winning 17-23. So a lot of the aggregate stats weren't really helping them. It was the awesome offensive night.
Could the rebound stats be a case of Fairfield getting putbacks that don't go in,
like O boards and things
yeah,
like
where you get 2-3 offensive rebounds and 2 putbacks that don't go in, and then you get the defensive rebound.
I didn't think to even jot those numbers down. I wish I would have.
Yeah.
But it's entirely possible.
Sure.
And again, it might have just been more of a Elder was shooting so well that night
that there wasn't anything to
there's
grab.
nothing to clean up.
Yeah.
So those are the main things that kind of drew my eye from Elder with that first game, but of course we have a second side of the coin to look at here.
Absolutely.
The Fairfield Indians, 16-7 coming into this, 55 points per game to 50.5 allowed. They've got a handful of quality wins. They beat Lakota West by 2 and by 1 this year, a team we've talked about pretty extensively, like Josh Tyson a lot. LaSalle they beat by 19, Lakota East by 5, but some of their losses get bad to weird.
Okay.
They got I love that word today. They got swept by Princeton this season, 11 points and 25.
Okay.
They lost to Lakota East by 16 in the other half, and then of course the Elder game that we've already mentioned.
By 7.
So some strange going on through there for sure, but very interesting numbers from their game against Elder. Davion Krim went for 30, and they didn't get it done, which is a little concerning to me.
Yes.
Again, to talking about numbers that I don't know how sustainable they are on offense.
I was going to say, and I think the big thing there is your second half of the note that I'm reading,
Yes.
which is no one else on Fairfield scored more than 8.
Right. And, yeah, there was not a whole lot of assistance going on around him. I do think Davion is a focal point for them, and is,
Sure.
I don't want to say used to carrying the workload, but definitely used to taking a bigger chunk of it. But you can't ask him to go drop 30 and hope that all the rest of the guys kind of fill it out. You do have to have a stronger game plan than that. Fairfield also didn't have a single block, but they had 6 steals. So that was kind of a difference maker for them, even though it didn't end up leading to the win. But they were a little bit more impressive on the actual turnover battle. And then they allowed 61 to Elder. Talked about that offense. That is the Panthers' second highest scoring game this year.
Which is interesting.
Right. It was like a 64, a 61, and a 60. That was the only time they ever got up in the sixes.
Yeah, I was just saying, because they're averaging 50, and to be able to get 60.
Right.
All right. Yeah, you let something happen there.
Something strange was going on. So this is a game that I am super duper interested in, because despite having that not common opponent, but already having that previous matchup, I still don't feel like I really know how these two teams play against each other.
Do you, because as you mentioned, Davion, correct?
Yes.
Davion Krim was the guy that game for them.
Mm-hmm.
Are there others who should be either the guy this time or become more of a supporting role to back that kind of a performance up?
Absolutely. Davion's not even their leading scorer.
Okay.
Michael Lewis is. I believe he averages a little over 14 a game, and I want to say he had 8 in that contest. It was, I think he was the 8.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it was kind of just a weird situation, off night for him. If he shows back up and they can kind of split that total a little bit more and maybe get like a 14 and a 20, or like some kind of something to make it work out, that should also help alleviate a lot of the defensive issues, because when Elder's coming at you, if you've got 2 folks scoring, that makes it a lot harder on the matchups and where you're putting guys, and actually being able to open up your teammates for those buckets to help fill out the stat sheet. So that's kind of a big focus there. And then Gabe Clemens, I would love to see him get a little bit more involved this game. Like I said, neither team had blocks. He averages 1.2, but he gets 9 points per game and 9 boards. He lives in the paint.
Yeah.
So I'd
He's
like
down
to
low
see,
guy.
Exactly. I'd love to see him kind of step up a little bit more in that defense, because that could be a massive X factor here.
Okay. Well, I think that'll be a very interesting game to watch. And like we said, these are all district championships for the most part.
They are. All on Friday.
All on Friday. So let's move on.
Both the boys' games are on Friday. Both the girls' games on Saturday.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So let's move on to the other boys' game, which is St. X versus Lebanon.
Yes, Lebanon.
Lebanon, yes.
No, you're good.
That's what I
said. Another GCL team. Get comfortable with the GCL, because there happens to be quite a few GCL teams remaining.
Surprise, surprise.
Exactly. But we will start with the Bombers, 18-5 and 5-1 within the South. Crazy number alert: 51.2 points per game to 39.3 allowed.
Okay.
Weird. 2 losses right before postseason time. Moeller to 24. Moeller was not Moeller was not a phenomenal basketball team this year.
Sure.
Like Kazanecki was good, and they had some of the extra pieces there, but they weren't really threatening St. X for the GCL side. I mean, that was their lone conference loss.
Okay.
That number can't be right because I said 5-1 early. Okay, but they also lost to Elder by 6, recovered with a 56-18 win against Coleraine.
Okay.
56-18.
56-18.
In basketball. Yeah.
Yeah. Football numbers in basketball.
Exactly.
We love it.
Exactly. Now, with the Bombers, the big focus for them has been a duo of guys, Donovan Wolozowski and Jacob Wassler. They are what the team operates through. Wolozowski has a little over 13 points per game.
Solid.
2 boards, 42.5 from the 3.
Yeah.
We know what that is. And then Wassler is their big man. He, I believe it was the St. X Muller. I got to go to that one. I was pretty shocked by how fast he moves.
Okay.
And they set him up a decent amount behind the arc and let him work in. And he's a tall kid. You know, like he is notably the tallest kid on the court more often than he's not. He averages 11.3 points per game, just under 7 boards. But again, there's a lot of mobility there. There's a lot of ability to use him in set pieces and start to get the flow rolling for offense. He's not just squared down in the post waiting for his chance to post somebody up and try to get to the bucket.
Sure.
Those two have been the driving forces behind St. X's success this year. I expect that to continue, and I expect both of them to be very hard matchups for Lebanon tomorrow.
Okay. Who do you see from Lebanon being then let me ask, what's Lebanon's keys to success in this game?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead quickly. 13-10,
Yeah.
56.5 to 58 allowed.
Okay.
4-game win streak coming into this.
Solid.
Anderson, Loveland, Milford, Western Hills. The only GCL South crossover we had was a rather big loss to LaSalle, 64-38.
Okay.
Again, for them, similar situation, but kind of in different roles. Their big man is their leading scorer, or at least their active post guy is their leading scorer, and then their more predominant, like everything guy, kind of again helps fill in the back end there.
Of course.
So we'll lead with Jashawn Coffey, 15.8 points per game, 7.6 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. Both of these guys can do everything. Coffey does get a little bit more space to just focus on grab that board, put it back up, and then kind of do whatever else you can.
Yeah.
Whereas you lean a little bit more on Matthew Weber, 2.7 points per game, 2.7 boards, 2.1 assists, 1.2 blocks. He's kind of your safety net.
You said Coffey is the big man?
Well, yeah, because he's more active in the post.
In the paint?
From the 7 boards.
It's just a surprising thing to me where he has the 2 steals,
right,
and Weber has the about 1.2 blocks a game.
Yeah,
or I would be like, wouldn't it be the other way around?
It's little funky, but yeah, it's Coffey, I believe, is like a forward, but he tries to be more in the post.
Like a 3-4,
right? More of like a kind of a traditional 4, even though that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
He is a very talented player, is what he is. But
absolutely,
if they are going to take down St. X here, you've got to keep that momentum rolling.
Okay.
I would really like to see them try to channel that offense through Coffey because while I do think Wassler is talented, I think St. X is going to be a little bit more focused on setting up Wolozowski in this game. I think his matchup's a little bit better. So if you can really get things working down low, establish the rebound game, establish the post game against St. X, and say, ball's in your court, you're going to have to work from outside.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get them. Because, like I said, these GCL South offenses love to try to wear you down. They love to play by their own tempo, and they will turn the juice up on you in the fourth quarter. To create that separation, you need to build a little bit more on the front end to reduce the impact of when they start hitting the gas.
Okay.
You need to be prepared for the storm because more often than not it's coming.
What would you want to see from like the first half for either team to give you more confidence that this team will carry it through the second half?
Since I do believe Lebanon is kind of the underdog, I'll pitch this more at them because I think St. X has a couple more ways to success and victory. If you can lead St. X by 3 or more,
okay,
just 2 possessions or more, and you have a +3 on the rebound margin.
Okay.
That tells me that you're in a good spot. You can still use that third quarter to establish it just a little bit more, but you also haven't gotten so far out in front that St. X is going to have to turn on the juice early and things get kind of hairy. You know, you've kind of set the tempo where you want it. You just got to capitalize to finish.
It's almost lulling St. X into a false sense of security.
Correct.
That then they would need to try and figure how to get out of.
Right,
So.
right. If you're Lebanon, you need to be the one prepared to say, all right, all out third quarter.
Yes.
Let's make this as hard on them as possible so that when the fourth hits, either they're already a little tired from having to deal with our output that we did. And now, obviously, you can't overextend yourself because if you send, tired bodies out for the fourth quarter, that's going to be a problem.
Then it's going to be a problem as well, yes.
But, yeah, you need to be able to find that happy medium of extra effort, not, a little extra energy to what you're doing without overexerting yourself.
Okay.
No huddle offense in football, essentially. It doesn't mean that you're gassing yourself out. It just means you're keeping the defense having to move quicker.
Football on the court
yes,
is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Reverse of basketball on grass. I love it.
St. X just held a team to 18. Football on the court's really not that far away.
Fair enough. So, yeah, those are two big games on Friday.
Yes.
Let's look at – you have two big games for the girls on Saturday.
I do. Yeah, we can lead off here, Badin and Purcell Marian.
Yes.
And I'm going to lead with Purcell because we talked about them fairly often. I've made no secrets about how much I respect Dee Alexander as a player.
Yes.
And her Cavs just continue to keep on keeping on.
Okay.
They are 20-6, 10-0 within the MVC, the reigning D3 champions. So you're going to have to steal a crown here if you're Badin, to keep on advancing. They haven't lost a game since January 25th. That would make them 8-0 in that
That's
time.
strange. Okay.
3 of their losses. So, told you they have 6. 3 of those are in the Nike Tournament of Champions, which are
other state champions?
Correct.
Okay.
Not conference, not not state,
not local.
Right. The big boys.
Yes.
And again, I think they went 1-3 in that tournament. But it was also kind of sandwiched in such a weird spot, and the caliber of teams that you're playing.
Sure.
And
it can be hard to play well when you're rushed into a tournament, things like that.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, because I want to say their games were a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just so funky.
Yeah,
but,
especially for high school.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to be used to that. But okay, let's talk about the 3 players that you need to know from Purcell before this game starts.
Of course.
Already tipped my hand a little bit. Dee Alexander, of course, the first one.
And if you don't know her by now, where you been?
Welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
Right. She averages 20.4 points per game, just under 8 boards, 4.5 assists, 2.3 steals, 42.2% behind the arc. Tell me something she can't do. Give her about 48 hours, and she'll do it really well.
I challenged Dee Alexander to get more blocks. There we go.
She's liable to have 7 tomorrow night.
Great.
Now that you've said that.
Good.
Well, Badin's not going to be pumped.
Well, sorry, Badin. My bad.
The Rams will not be happy. But Dee Alexander is not a one-trick pony. She does not have to be the only person contributing here. They have 2 more folks that are averaging over 10 points per game. Starting with Kiara Miller, 13.4 with 3 boards, 4.5 assists, 2 steals to go along with it. Yeah, I mean, these numbers are absurd. Even Samaya Wilkins, who is their 3rd scorer, 12 points per game, almost 10 boards.
Yeah.
Over an assist a game, over 2 steals a game.
They have sticky fingers on that team.
Yeah, it's absurd. If you're averaging 6.3 steals per game from your top 3
players,
scorers,
yes,
you're doing something right.
Yes.
Something magical is happening within your building. And to only lose 3 games within your actual schedule, that isn't tournaments against state champions.
Yeah.
They have the formula figured out. They are coming off of a title game. Purcell Marian is not a team to question. It's to just kind of figure out where the holes are, and really you don't see many of them. Mm-hmm. They don't really present themselves that often. And a lot of times it's just a weird fluke that happened in this game that you probably won't see for another 5 or 6 games. Their mess ups are.
They feel like the Warriors.
Yeah.
Of, what was that, 2014?
Or even the Heat, with the LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh. Heat, even if they didn't win every title they had, they went to the dance.
Yeah.
or the Spurs rosters. The Spurs rosters might actually be a better.
Actually, I like that. Yeah, because you have
your Tim Duncan in essence, and you've got your Tony and your Manu to kind of fill out the rest.
Yeah,
and they went to the dance a lot, so they're familiar with what the end of the season looks like. So yeah, they're going to be a hard team to touch, Brad.
What are the Rams going to need to do? I'll lead you into. They just had a big win.
Huge.
Are they going to be able to carry that moving forward in the tournament?
So usually I don't like to put just a ton of stock in who a team has beat, especially early in these brackets, because a lot of times it is kind of not the greatest matchups.
Sure.
This game that Badin's coming off of absolutely has implications for Saturday.
Okay.
Because they didn't just beat some random, kind of 500 team. They beat co-ed rival, 22-3 on the year, Carroll, leading the GCL co-ed within that division for the record. And, I mean, they were really, really good. They beat them by 12, which just is an absurd outcome. To be perfectly honest, I assumed we would be talking Carroll versus Purcell.
Okay.
Which obviously, proud of Badin for proving my assumption wrong, and we know what happens when you assume.
Yes.
But it was a massive, massive momentum-changing win for them, which is already a team that's the highest scoring offense in the GCL co-ed on the girls' side, which is where the key came in. 59 points. They averaged 56.8 per game, 44.2 allowed. They're 20-6. They weren't, some massive underdog. It was destined to be a fairly close game, but Carroll naturally was kind of the assumption there.
Sure.
Now, I do want to point out the three players. Again, they've got three, not quite on the same points per game total, but three folks that you can trust in dire moments.
Yes.
We'll lead with Gracie Cosgrove here. She is the team's leading scorer, 17.5 points per game. Don't really get just a ton of her out of the aggregates, 2.3 boards, 1.7 assists, but almost 2 steals, and that'll play a massive role.
Especially when paired with the next player that you're about to read.
Yeah, because this is like the ultimate, you worry about scoring, which she can score,
yes.
But you worry about the primary scoring. I will do literally everything else that basketball has to offer. Braylon Even, 14.3 points per game.
Yep.
7 boards. 4.6 assists. And I'm going to let you say this last one because I can tell this is the number that had you all pumped up.
4.2 steals. I love it.
Yeah, dude. Come on now. We were just talking about how impressive it is for 3 people to average 6.3 points per game.
And you've got 2 averaging 6 a game.
Well, and she has just 2/3 of that by herself.
Yes.
She is 2 great defensive outputs in 1 on average.
Yeah.
And that's not even including the nights where she'll go for 8 by herself. Yeah.
That's so.
That's what
I love it,
dude. It's the best.
It's basketball the way it was meant to be played,
dude. A quick side note, and I promise I will not make this too long.
You're fine.
Whenever I used to play 2K when I was younger,
yeah,
I would always make a point guard that its main attributes
was stealing,
stealing and assists.
Okay,
that was my bread and butter. This right here is speaking to my soul.
Yeah.
So shout out Braylon there. And then Ashley Pate to round us out here, 7.9 points per game, 2.6 boards, 2.3 assists, 1.5 steals.
So let me ask you this. Do you think Badin could be a surprise early upset for Purcell?
They could be.
Okay.
If I'm putting my chips on one team, it's going to be Purcell just because they've proven very hard to go against in the last 24 months or so. They haven't lost a whole lot of games. But Badin is kind of the first team on the docket where it's like this becomes a question, and I think that whenever we get outside of Cincinnati and we go to these regionals and obviously states, I think that there's going to be probably another 2-ish games that are going to be easier for Purcell than Badin just based on how things are going to shake out.
Yes.
The big thing that I would be watching for them is obviously how can you limit D. Alexander? Because while I do have faith in the supporting cast, if you will, of the Cavs stepping up and providing 10, 12, 14 points on a night, when you limit D, and you make them kind of become the primary, it is a little bit more of an inconsistent result. You don't necessarily – now, they can still go off. Don't get me wrong. They like Kiara Miller can absolutely still give you 20 on a night, but it's not a guarantee. Like it feels like it is with these sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take our next step now.
This is
the
pinnacle of weird.
I like this game in your notes because you changed the format of how you wrote them down,
drastically.
which tells me that things are going to be interesting.
So I want to preface this. Again, the GCL madness continues.
Absolutely.
2 GCL co-ed teams here. We've got Alter, the Knights, McNicholas, the Rockets.
Okay.
And they split their series. And hold on, let me tell you about the just Alter first.
Sure.
7-8, 4-6 in conference. 49.6 points per game to 42.1 allowed. But here's the regular season series. Alter won by 4, lost by 3.
Okay.
1 point swing in this regular season conference or in the regular season matchups.
Yeah.
So let's lead with the Knights. What I've learned from their season series.
Okay.
Sarah Brand will ball regardless. She had 17 and 16, 5 steals combined across those games. She is going to be misconsistent, and if something starts to tail off here, it's probably why Alter lost. You know what I mean? If those numbers take a dip, I imagine the Knights do too. Sure. There's a really, really strange situation because their offense had a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation in these games, but the bad one won.
Yeah.
So as a team, they shot 29.1% from the field and won. They shot 54.3% from the field in the next one and lost.
I'm sorry for laughing, but it is
absurd.
It is weird.
It's objectively absurd.
It's the word that you've loved using. It's weird and it's interesting.
We need to make Jared put weird somewhere in the title of this for YouTube.
Weird.
Yes. Oh yeah. Maybe we'll just edit it onto the thumbnail. That could be cool. But yeah. So it's a situation of we know the offense can be very one or the other, but it didn't really matter. Which doesn't make me feel great about projecting this game. The turnover swing was a big thing to point at. They had 10 turnovers in their win. Still talking about Alter here. 20 in their loss.
Sure.
So, you lose the ball 10 more times, but it's a 7-point swing. So, kind of a fun thing to pay attention to there. I'm sorry. That was McNick.
Yes, this is McNick.
I apologize. I said Alter. McNick, in their win, had 10 turnovers, 20 in their loss.
Okay.
Mia Nienaber is how I believe that is said. I apologize if I've said that wrong. She is probably going to be the difference maker here.
Okay.
20 points, 8 steals, 4 assists in the win, 15 points, no steals in the loss. And the extra numbers were, I don't think there was one above like 3. She might have had 4 boards, but it was, kind of in a weird spot there. Grace McCafferty led the team with 19 points in the loss and had 12 boards, but had 11 points in the win.
Okay.
So, and not nearly as many boards. So, kind of going back to that shooting number, strange, very funhouse mirror. Both of these teams, didn't do that great in the first game and then did better in the second one, obviously. But,
yes.
Just a bizarre, again, one of those, like, I don't know how she impacts the game because the numbers are the numbers. And then the last player I want to focus on here, Jordan Wheatley. She can also be a big difference maker. She was kind of the swing. 13 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists in the win, and also had 2 steals there. 9 points, 4 boards in the loss. I know that's not the direct swing because it's 7 and then 4, but you have 4 more points in the second game, win by 4, whatever. Kind of gets funky.
I mean, to be honest with you, my read on this, just from what you're telling me, is that this is a game of defense.
Yes.
More so than any other game that we've had.
Yes. The scorers will pop up wherever they have.
Yes.
But it's just I can't get over that offensive shooting number. I really can't.
I know that, but when you tell me that they had 20 turnovers, McNick had 20 turnovers in that loss.
Yes.
And then no steals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mia having 8 steals almost had as many steals as the team had turnovers that game in the win. So it's like that is such a massive difference maker that you see 29% and it could be just, well, they had such a volume that it didn't matter.
Yeah, and that was a big swing on the field goal percentage. Like it was, I want to say like maybe a 10 to 12 difference in field goals. But yeah, it's definitely going to come down to turnover battle. And that obviously will have its natural impact on offense. But it's just such a weird game. I mean, there's a 1-point difference in the 2 times they matched up. I can't pick a winner.
Yes.
You know, and if I had to, I think I'd probably go McNick.
Okay.
But it's such a...
It feels like a coin flip.
Right. Yeah. I'm throwing darts at the wall
It's a coin flip about which team shows up in the first place for both.
Exactly.
In a way, so.
Exactly. And if the offensive totals bounce back for Alter, and if that matters.
Yeah.
You know, or it's... Point being, watch this game.
Yes.
Because no matter how this shakes out, it is going to be very fun.
I was going to say, this seems like a good... I'm glad you saved this one for last.
Yeah.
This was a fun Saturday game.
Yeah, because I really don't know how to, like, I don't know what to do with my hands, you know, Ricky Bobby style. It's a very confusing place to be. Now, I do want to shout out a handful of games that we have.
Go for it.
We talked about how many Kentucky games and, like, how that schedule fell out, but we do have 5 boys games coming up on Friday. We'll have those up on the screen here. Ryle and Cooper.
Okay.
Simon, Kenton, Walton, Verona.
Okay.
Covcath plays Holy Cross. We'll have Highlands and Newport. And then we'll have Lloyd Memorial and Dixie Heights.
Okay.
So all of those games, both the boys' games I talked about, will be on 19 on the clock. Or not 19 on the clock, that's us, final quarter.
Yes.
So make sure to tune into that Friday night.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the games that you can look forward to with the high school. And let's I wanted to make a quick mention of some spring sport.
Yes.
Because baseball has gotten underway, and the UC Bearcats are ranked.
They're doing some damage.
They're doing some damage. They're doing some good things. They're 32-25 overall as of recording. They are playing a team whose logo I don't recognize, which is why I need to look up who it is. I'm looking at the wrong thing or something here. How am I? Hold on. That's last year.
Welcome to college.
Because I'm looking at the wrong schedule. That's why.
That'll do.
I was like, man, that was so many games. 32-25 is what they finished last year. They're 4-3 right now. They won. They won a series against Duke. 1-2, lost 1. That's a number 11 Duke.
Yep.
Split a series with UNLV. They're playing UC San Diego in California. That's when, I was like Tritons. I don't know what that team is. But they are currently ranked number 23 in the NCAA, which is huge.
Yeah,
and
that's massive.
Very awesome. I mean, to be quite honest, I feel like baseball, especially in the college game, because of when it starts, is such a
Southern sport.
like East Coast, Southern, West Coast sport.
Right.
It's where the sun shines.
Where the warm is.
When it's February.
Yes. Basically where they're doing NASCAR races.
Yeah,
right
they were able to play in Durham, North Carolina in February. So,
yeah.
But I wouldn't want to play in Cincinnati, to be quite honest.
Absolutely not.
At that time.
Have you seen the winter we had?
I've been following it a little bit.
But you felt the impact. But it naturally kind of gravitates to those warmer states or at least warmer regions.
Yes.
So for UC to be doing what they're doing this early is impressive.
And actually, their opening day is going to be within the next podcast.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be March 5th on Wednesday. They're playing Toledo. They do have a magnet schedule giveaway that day. So if you want to catch some good baseball, you got that versus Toledo, and then against Canisius on that Friday. Canisius. I don't know that college. Canisius?
That would be my guess. I've never heard of it.
I haven't either. So shout out to that school. I hope you're not listening.
I doubt it.
But as always, thank you all for listening and watching. We're, of course, on the Roku app, on the Amazon Fire Fox 19 app. You can download it directly through your TV. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts as well as on our website. You can find a direct link into the audio version and watch the video version, as well as watching it on YouTube. I think I have hit every single place that we
hit the quota.
Put the show
We hit
now.
the quota.
And thank you all for listening. We will see you again next week.
Have a good one.